CGN family, welcome to another Ashes of Creation video on weapons. This is going to be part 4, which we're going to be touching on some legendary weapons, some other stuff. I'm going to kind of conclude it. Oh, gear sets, gear appearances, all that stuff, which I got some stuff to say on that once we get to it, because Missy knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, as you guys can see, I wanted to kind of pull up a shield, as you can see. So this is another one from, technically these are coming from Apocalypse, but like I said, I'm pretty sure they're going to be carrying over into Ashes of Creation, so why not? But again, I'm Brad, this is Missy. So, yeah.
I feel like I'm going to have to change my birth certificate or something.
Missy? Right. Alright, Missy, weapon progression.
Alright, so weapons will have their own progression paths and their own applicable types of skills. The weapon use combo system determines special effects that proc based on weapon progression. Players can spec into weapon abilities that change what combinations are available based on the type of weapon. Ancillary effects proc based on enchantment types. Gear enhancement, power stones, can be applied to elemental or energy types of damage. A skill tree is used to grant effects, making them better or branching off into different directions. Passive skills will enable players to work toward mastery of a weapon. Weapon proficiency, based on length of use of a weapon, is not a planned feature. So, question. Are weapons balanced towards a proficiency system? For example, the longer I use a sword, the better my damage will be, or will it be a normal RPG stat system with no long-term scaling? So Sarah Flanagan answers, we will not be using a proficiency system as described, but players will have passive abilities in their skill tree that will increase effectiveness of certain weapons. Becoming a master of swords will be something that is possible, just not in that particular manner. Steven says, Ashes is all about providing many progression paths. The reason why we don't like the term endgame is because with the amount of progression that's available, with the amount of diversity in player agency that impacts the world, we kind of want the weapon system and add an element of that as well. Of enchant weapons outside of that too. That's not always going to be like a vertical progression. Some of it's going to be giving up something to get something else. So maybe do less physical damage, but more magical damage, that kind of thing. Progression in various PvP systems will unlock enchantment stones that grant temporary PvP focus benefits to gear via a socketing system. Performance is measured over 6-month PvP seasons, which include Guild Wars, arenas, and caravan PvP. It's not as though you're going to necessarily acquire these once and then you're set for your PvP enchantments, but instead you'll have to continually perform month after month in order to keep having those slotted enchantments. So enchanting. There are two types of enchantments for items.
It's all that caffeine.
Too much caffeine. Yeah. Too many cans of Monsters.
It just you said enchantments, and then you just look like a deer in headlights.
It's like
your brain was like, reboot.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's funny.
Let's start this again. Okay, enchanting. There are two types of enchantments for items, vertical and horizontal. Vertical enchantments are a power progression for a crafted item. More damage or mitigations, added effects, or bonuses. Vertical enchantments include risk. There isn't RNG in crafting, but there may be a small amount of RNG in enchanting. Over-enchanting items comes with a potential risk that the item decays or is destroyed if a safety margin is exceeded. This system is subject to testing. So Stephen says, when it comes to over-enchanting things, what we're going to do is likely have a safety, and this is something obviously it needs to be tested. But we're going to have a safety period of enchantment, like in Lineage 2, if you think you could enchant +4 or something. So we're going to have a similar system where you can enchant safely, and then when you start to take risks, that percentage of potentially damaging your item either through the decay system or completely disabling it through the destruction system will be a risk that's present. So horizontal enchantments are more situational. For example, I'd like my sword to do force damage instead of holy damage because the monsters I tend to fight are incorporeal. This doesn't make the item more powerful, but instead more applicable to different situations and less so to others. This type of enchanting assumes no risk, just time and effort. Enchanting services are sold at player stalls. Enchanting does not increase an item's level requirement. You don't really push a particular item's level requirement or the identity of that item. You can enhance it, you can add enchantments to it, but it's still the item it is. So power creep. Stephen says power creep is a balance issue. When it comes to gear progression specifically, the idea is to create an open market that is not heavily dependent on soulbound items, and having many item sinks and gold sinks within that economy that allows for the potential degradation and loss of assets within that closed economy, and not introduce items from the market that companies put in from a pay-to-win perspective, or from a pay-to-convenience perspective that undermines the economy the players have built. That is a huge mistake the companies have made in the past, and that lends to the imbalancing of what designers may have actually balanced well. So legendary items. There is a small RNG chance of looting rare and legendary items or crafting materials from mobs based on the level, status, and type of mob. This also applies to harvesting resources with a gathering profession. There is a much higher chance that materials and unique recipes are dropped that can be used to craft items of equitable value. Legendary equipment is only dropped by legendary world bosses. Legendary equipment will have a roughly 6 to 12% improvement in base stats, subject to testing and balancing. At each stage, from gatherer to processor to crafter, you are required to have certain prerequisites before those elite types of materials can be essentially gathered, processed, or crafted. Gatherers must have high-quality tools to gather resources. Processors must have high-tier processing buildings on their freehold to produce rare materials. And crafters must also satisfy certain prerequisites to craft legendary equipment. Stephen says the amount of effort needed and interdependencies across the different types of players, between raiders and PvPers and crafters and even role players and the taverns and businesses, the processors and the gatherers, all of those systems will likely have a component that lends toward creating or crafting that legendary item. We want to stay away from the highly RNG'd system and instead take our multiple progression paths that we are offering the players and put the construction components for achieving these legendary items within them, so it encourages communities to work together, because it's going to be difficult for just one person by themselves to gather everything. Not to say that they couldn't in an economic sense. By buying those components, that's possible. But achieving them from a time investment standpoint, we want it to be considerably less RNG focused. So discovery of legendary items will unlock further chapters of the lore. There are absolutely legendary items, and they're not items that are attained easily, nor are they granted out in a volume. There might even be items that are single items that will exist on the server at any given time. A legendary weapon is easily distinguished by its visual appearance. It will be very ornate and detailed weapon. more so than any other weapon or piece of equipment in the game. It will also include some awesome looking effects that won't be too gaudy. They won't be too bright and shiny so that it doesn't look good, but they will be subtle and people will notice it and know, wow, that guy has this weapon. So legendary items are not intended to be temporary. A notable exception to this is royal mounts. The fact that there is only one of them, or very, very few of them, depending on what it is. I think that in and of itself is a balance component, right? And you need to make sure that the players who are striving for those legendary things and who are devoting the time, energy, resources in order to achieve them are accurately rewarded. We do not intend on having legendary items that are temporary.
That's good. It'll be like you try to destroy it when you're done with it, and it's like you can't destroy this. What game was that? Was it WoW? That was like you can't destroy this. You're like
The legendaries that are still sitting in your bag from,
Legion.
2 expansions ago.
Oh yeah. Well, it's cool that they're not temporary though. So that's So, like I said, there's a lot of this game, and you've said it perfectly. It's a lot of hypotheticals. As if we're talking about this, we haven't shown you anything yet. So
this may or may not happen.
Yeah, like
we're still looking at this.
Like I said, they've been working about this game for about 4 or 5 years now. We still got 3 years to go. I feel there's so many things we just haven't seen other than cosmetics and graphical things. We haven't really seen systems and just, like I said, a lot of stuff. Like I said, it's good stuff, a lot of promises to be kept, like I said.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we got gear sets. So gear sets, also known as tier sets, are a part of Ashes of Creation. Different tiers of gear are accessible based on a character's level. Players gain bonuses depending on the number of pieces of the set they have equipped, so aka set bonuses. An overarching set effect is granted to wearers of exclusively one type of armor, for example, all cloth or all plate. So I think even World of Warcraft did that if you were a plate wearer and you somehow, or I guess a better one would be like a hunter, and you're supposed to be wearing all mail, but you had some leather still, you wouldn't be getting like the 5% defense buff, armor buff, because you didn't have all mail, for example. Certain set bonuses may trade off core gear stats. There may be set bonuses that members of certain communities will obtain based on their gear set type. There are passive abilities that can be chosen to become more adept with certain set types. There will be viable non-set builds. Racial appearance of gear sets is tied to the character model of that race. Best in slot weapons. So best in slot weapons and armor is based on a character's role and the type of monster they are facing. So your best in slot isn't just going to be, you need to get the whole set from, Archimonde, and on World of Warcraft. You have to actually, you might have the best set for Archimonde, but your best set will also be different if you're facing, what was it, like Zargaris one day, we were due face him. So that's pretty cool. So you're gonna have multiple armor sets then. So it means hopefully you have big bags. or they have something that is kind of like an internal closet system where your armor doesn't really sit in your bags, but I doubt it. It's going to be in your bags, and you're going to have to get a lot of bags at some point because
we're going to have a giant sack that we'll be dragging behind us.
Yeah, well, I mean, who's to say that like you're going to you will want a best in slot for an ice dragon, and there's a best in slot for a fire dragon, and there's a best in slot for a wind dragon, and there's a best in slot for a rock dragon. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of different sets.
Does the rock dragon have an electric guitar?
Yes. All right, gear appearance. So gear is intended to be realistic in appearance. What fun is that? There will not be oversized weapons. Armor will not be overly sexual in appearance. So Jeffrey Bard, don't be hooraying. Like I said, I'm gonna finish this and then we'll go on. This is what I wanted to say. So we're going with a kind of more realistic look, not necessarily realistic setting, but we want our characters to weigh and kind of feel like that they're there. So that's for Jeffrey Bard there. Steven says, I'm more of the mind that it wouldn't be really serve a purpose to have bikini plate armor. Just in like reality, if you're going to have armor, it should be protective. I think from a fashion statement, it is enjoyable for some people, but it's kind of an immersive issue. So to me, I feel like this is they're going to start with more coverage, but I'm sorry, but men and women playing, you're going to want more sexy or revealing clothing, armor. And the thing is if you're going to be like the immersive issue, well, look at a mage. If you're talking about like shows off the belly, shows off some cleavage, whatever. Same with the dude, right? Like what if he's still showing off his belly and he's, like wearing shorts or whatever, I think,
That's kind of work.
yeah, I think it's just like you're playing a fantasy game and I think in the end you would have a magical barrier protecting you in that sense.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need
Magical
armor to be
barriers.
protected. You have magical barriers. So, anyways, so armor will take on racial appearances, which is pretty cool. So, depending on what race you are, it'll change. Have yet to really truly see this though, because some of the armor sets or the cosmetic sets that they're mainly showing us right now, they are staying the same looking depending on what. Like today, the December cosmetic set, they showed it on every single race. Surprisingly, they haven't actually showed all the races, but then they showed all the races wearing this said, armor. Let's see, cosmetics can be used by all races, but there might be slight variations to make them work with the body builds of each race, which is what they showed today. Players can change gear colors using dyes, so there's going to be dyes. Helmet display can be toggled on and off. Hair will likely be masked if helmet display is toggled on, of course. Particular effects are used to denote the importance and rarity of some weapons. Weapons are able to be sheathed. Crafters are able to influence what their crafted items will look like. See, like, that system right there, like, man, you guys, they have to give us, like, what does that look like? Like, what is the crafter crafting the look of the weapon? Like, I mean, is it basic? Is it like, you could be really...
That's why I'm crafting.
Yeah. So it says appearance, slots, and transmogs. Oh, here we go, Missy. So, gear will have appearance slots. So this purely just sounds like Black Desert Online. You had your gear slots, and then you had the actual visual slots. So you could wear the gear, get all the benefits of the gear, but then you could change the look of it. So transmutation, transmog, cosmetic slots, they are used to copy the appearance of an item in some cases. There are rules when applying cosmetic to specific items, unlike costumes, which don't have level restrictions. Cosmetic slots can be toggled on and off by the player. Default player appearance may be automatically applied during sieges or other large-scale battles to improve client-side performance. So that kind of sucks. Like, if you have this really cool looking transmog and then you just get turned to plain Jane, you're like, I want to go to battle and look all flashy, but
Yeah, but if you're like in amongst 200 people, nobody's going to see you in image. You're going to be this big.
I will see myself. So, Kickstarter weapon skin. So, Kickstarter backers will receive a unique weapon skin usable on all types of weapons, including subtle, and tasteful glow particle effects. So that's way late. You know, if you're a Kickstarter, you're good to go. But for the rest of us, we don't get that fun stuff. Let's see. So summoned weapons. So classes with a summoner secondary may grant augmented skills at summoned weapons. These summoned weapons are not able to be equipped. So it sounds like the summoner is not only going to be able to summon pets, but they're going to be able to summon weapons. This is why we need to see summoner. Like we need these things. We're like we literally have 3. I counted them today, Missy. We have 3 archetypes out. We are missing 5. Like I think Ranger is supposed to be coming out soon, but you have Ranger, Bard, Summoner, Fighter, and what was that last one? I'll think about it. But they're
and how are you going to summon weapons? You're going to summon them out of somebody else's bag?
Right, summon.
Mine.
Mine. It says the word equip only applies to items. There are currently no plans to include summoning items into a player's inventory or character slots. Well, Missy, there you go. Sorry. It may, however, be possible to change the appearance and damage type /data of a weapon through the use of a spell. There are summoned weapons that appear as spell VFX to damage opponents for a period of time. These will not be able to be wielded since wielding implies an item in a character's equipment slot. So we'll definitely keep an eye out on that. Like I said, a lot of theory crafting right now with what these look like and whatnot. And I just was wanting to see what my question was earlier. Rogue. There you go. Summoner, Bard, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue. We haven't seen those. So yeah, like I said, like we need to see these. We need to see these weapons and armor on these things and kind of go from there. So but yeah, guys, so that'll do it for our weapons videos. We're going to be going into armor next. So hopefully you guys enjoyed taking a look at how weapons are used. You know, the different type of skins that are going to be used, legendary weapons, weapon progression, guns, gear slots, the races and classes and how they affect things, weapon targeting, weapon skill tree. Just kind of go back through all these and then just kind of going through to show you guys all the different type of weapon types. Yeah, with that, guys, we're going to conclude on weapons. And I've just said weapons a bunch. So anyways, I'm Brad, aka Endless88, and that's Miss Say, aka Medowin. So you guys take it easy out there, stay safe, and we will see you next time for some armor. So have a good night, good day, whatever time it is. So take it easy, guys.
Night night.